Wasabi guys, Void here coming back at y'all with yet another one of my top 10 videos. This time we're going to be going over the top 10 best thief cards in the Commander format. Now just to clarify, when I say thief cards, I mean anything that is going to steal either creatures, artifacts, anything like that from your opponent's side of the field, maybe even their library, their hand, anything like that. And even though we have a lot of these effects in the graveyard, we're not really going to focus on graveyard reanimation because there are a ton of cards that effectively do the same thing. And the same thing goes with active treason effects. There are so many, so we're only going to focus on the best of the best. Now, as usual, we're going to go over some honorable mentions. First one I have is Yasova Dragonclaw. Actually a pretty fun commander if you can build her right. The only reason why I wouldn't put her on the top 10 is that she does demand quite a setup. You do want to make her power a lot higher than it normally is, so that you can gain control of some of your opponent's better creatures when you can use her trigger during combat. But still, if you can take advantage of sack outlets, Conjurer's Closet, Deadeye Navigator effects, things like that, you are then capable of retaining those creatures, keeping whatever you're stealing. It's a very fun deck to make. It's basically active treason, the deck. Next we have Mariki Rebarit, I've never been able to say her name, and Rubinia Soulsinger. They're very similar. I would say Mariki's a little bit better because whenever that creature would then leave your control, it's destroyed, she becomes untapped, and Rubinia doesn't really do anything like that. She's 2 more mana in different colors, very bad compared to Mariki. I would say Mariki's pretty much playable compared to Rubinia, but they're both pretty weird. You pretty much want to have them as one of the 99. I wouldn't say they're good commander options, but then again, I've been able to make some pretty good decks out of some pretty linear commander options. Then we have Captivating Vampire. In the mirror, this guy is fantastic, and it's likely going to win you so many games because all you have to do is just tap down vampires, gain control of your opponent's vampires, and then those vampires then can count towards the tapping down more vampires. It can get out of hand pretty quickly, especially in the new Edgar Markov vampire deck, where you're just going to be getting a ton of these token vampires that are going to count towards it. And you also get an Anthem. However, really good if you can take advantage of that vampire synergy. If you're unable to, not going to really see much play in other decks though. Really powerful in the Edgar Markov vampire deck though. Then we have Olivia Voldaren, another vampire thief basically. We can ping our opponent's creatures, turn them into vampires if they aren't already, and then put a +1/+1 counter on her. But the more important thing is that you can then pay the 5 mana to gain control of target vampire. So if your opponent's creatures are already vampires, that's even stronger. But if they are not, then you can just ping them, gain control of them, all for 7 mana, so it is kind of expensive, and it is just creatures. There's another card on here that's very similar, which I'm going to get to later. But for now, both of those vampires, very strong, but just honorable mentions. And then we have Zealous Conscripts. Being able to gain control of a permanent until end of turn is very powerful, and she's obviously known pretty well for the Kiki Jiki combo. If you're able to pull it off, you can just keep getting more copies of Zealous Conscripts, untapping your Kiki Jiki, gaining control of it, so you can just keep doing that over and over again with that combo, getting infinite Zealous Conscripts, and they all have haste because Kiki Jiki gives those copies haste. Very powerful. However, in a lot of decks, not really going to be enough for 5 mana on a creature ETB to gain control of a permanent until end of turn. It's good, but unless you're able to combo with it, it's usually just a one and done card. So now we go on to the actual top 10. Number 10 we have Nicol Bolas Planeswalker. Only reason why it's only number 10 is because he isn't really well known for just being a thief card. I would say his minus is the best thing about him when it comes to that aspect. It's the only thing really. All his other abilities are pretty good. So in general, as a card, he might just be the most powerful one on the list. However, when it comes to just stealing things, he can only really steal a creature on the minus. But that is still worthy enough to put him in the top 10, is that he is very powerful when it comes to his blue magic. He is capable of gaining control of creatures, indoctrinating them, just like he did with the gods on Amonkhet, and basically just bending them to his will, and that's a huge aspect of the character. So the fact that his minus is basically right off the bat, you're just going to gain control of the best possible creature on the battlefield. That is fantastic. Definitely worthy of the top 10, at least number 10. Number 9 is Thada Adel Acquisitor. Just a 2/2 with Island Walk. Is capable of dealing combat damage pretty easily because of the Island Walk. A lot of artifact decks that you want to steal from are going to be playing blue likely. So if you're capable of swinging in there, deal combat damage with her, you're capable of searching up an artifact from their deck, exiling it, and then you can play it until end of turn. The cool thing about that is that it's multi-purposed. You can either play whatever you're taking from their deck, or you can just exile their best possible artifact. Something like a Paradox Engine, maybe a Panharmonicon, whatever they want to use to combo. Ashnod's Altars, you get the gist. You want to take their combo pieces if you have nothing else to take that's going to help you. If all they have is Soul Ring, then so be it. Just take it and then play it. It's never a bad thing just to take your opponent's Soul Ring. It's one less Soul Ring that they have to play. So if you look at it like that, you're getting all the advantage here. The only downside I would say is that you do have to connect. So if you're in a situation where you want an opponent's artifact from their deck and they just don't have an island up, well, you kind of have to hope they don't have creatures up to block. Otherwise, Thada Adele is going to kind of be useless in that situation. So she would be higher if it wasn't necessarily combat damage in order to trigger the ability. Number 8, I have Dak Faden. Unlike Nicol Bolas, this guy is more or less just the Thief Planeswalker. His minus and his ult are all about stealing stuff. His minus is going to gain control of a target artifact, so very similar to Nicol Bolas' minus when he's able to gain control of a creature. This guy can just take the best target artifact on the field. But his ult is fantastic. If you're able to pull it off, whenever you cast a spell that targets one or more permanents, you gain control of those permanents. It goes from being able to take control of artifacts to permanents in general, which is super powerful. I just think being able to gain control of as many permanents as you possibly can is super powerful. And his plus isn't terrible either. It's just card advantage. It's your basic loot effect. You draw 2 and then discard 2, or you could choose another player to do it, but you're more than likely going to do it on yourself. Overall, a pretty solid Planeswalker, very underrated as well. Number 7 is Gilded Drake. Whenever it enters the battlefield, you swap control of it with one of your opponent's creatures. However, there are some combos, such as with Rune of the Hidden Realm, where you're capable of then flickering it again. It comes back into play under its owner's control, and then you just restart the whole process all over again, therefore making it pretty deadly in that scenario. But even at its worst, you're still going to be able to swap out control with the best possible creature on the field, likely, which most creature ETBs are usually just good in that aspect, but when you're constantly able to just flicker it over and over again, you get the use out of it, you gain control of that creature, it doesn't go back to them. It's not like an until end of turn effect with something like Zealous Conscripts, so while it only deals with creatures, it does give you that creature permanently, so if you're able to then flicker it over and over again, you get those creatures for however long they remain on the field until they're removed, which is super powerful. One of the most hated creatures in blue in the whole format, easily. Number 6 is Empress Galena, definitely seeing an increase in play, especially when you consider the change from the legendary rule with Planeswalkers. Now they're considered legendary permanents, so you can pay the 2 blue and the activated ability, tap her, gain control of a legendary permanent, so you can take their best Planeswalker, you can take their best legendary artifacts, enchantments, creatures, even lands, and it's all just super powerful. There are so many good lands that are legendaries, so many good creatures, a lot of commanders, well, all of them are legendary, so you're capable of taking their Voltron commanders if they don't have something like hexproof. You're capable of taking something like a Paradox Engine. You're capable of just taking so much that makes Commander Commander, and that is usually the legendary creatures, the commanders that have decks built around them, being able to just take control of them. It's not until end of turn, they don't get these back, so it's super fantastic. It's going to slow down the game, make it difficult for them to come back. A lot of combos, a lot of win cons are based around interacting with specific commanders, so taking them from your opponents is going to help you win the game, plain and simple. Number 5 is Send Triplets, another annoying card. If you don't already get the theme, stealing your opponent's cards is quite annoying, and Send Triplets is very well known for doing that. Not in the typical, oh look what you have on the board, I'm gonna take it, but rather, what do you have in your hand? It's my turn, I get to choose one player, and I can pretty much stop them from interacting with anything that turn. I can play their spells from their hand, I can play lands from their hand, which is another underrated aspect from Send Triplets. You can play their land drops, take them away from them, play their best spells, take away their combo pieces, whatever you want to do. Only downside is that you're more than likely going to be forced to choose the player within your colors, which is Esper, but that shouldn't be a problem. Some of the best decks in the format are combo, some of the best decks in the format are also control, and a lot of them do fall within Esper colors, or at least play 2 of the 3 colors anyway. It completely just screws over control, and that's a fantastic aspect of this card. Not necessarily going to synergize with anything beyond just your typical Esper control decks. You could synergize with artifacts because they are considered artifacts, but not really anything flavor-wise other than just pure control, I would say. Still a powerful commander option if you just want to steal your opponent's stuff. Very well known for doing that. Number 4, we have Insurrection. Now, I didn't want to put a whole bunch of these active treason-like effects on here, so I went with the best of the best. Insurrection is essentially one of the best red win cons in the whole format. If you're able to pull it off, if you're able to resolve it, hopefully your opponents don't have any sack outlets, anything that could bail them out at the last minute. So you gain control of all creatures, including your own. You untap them, they gain haste, which is super powerful. If you play any creatures before this, they all gain haste and they're all able to attack, and likely what you do is then you swing out with them. If you can't outright kill everyone, you more than likely want to kill the best players at the table who are in the best position to win. That way whoever's left likely isn't going to be able to stop whatever you have on the field, and you're more than likely to win. More often than not though, going to annoy the heck out of your opponents. You're going to take control of all their creatures and then punch them in the face with those creatures. There's really nothing more insulting than doing that. Winning the game with your opponent's cards, for a lot of people, they're just not going to be able to come back from that. Then number 3, we have Memnarch. This was the card I was referencing when I was talking about Olivia Voldaren. Very similar, however, instead of vampires, we have artifacts, so way better. When you're able to gain control of artifacts, turn things into artifacts, and one of the coolest aspects about this card is that if you have infinite mana, Memnarch is effectively a win con, because you are able to use the first ability and the second ability as many times as you want to. You can turn your opponent's lands into artifacts and then gain control of them. You can turn your opponent's enchantments, you can turn their creatures, all that stuff can turn into artifacts for you to gain control of. So infinite mana is pretty much an automatic win. There's really no way that your opponents are ever going to come back from that. No lands pretty much means you're done. But even without that, there are certain cards like Mycosynth that make it more efficient to take control of your opponent's stuff. The fact that artifacts are pretty popular in so many different decks in the format already makes Memnarch a super powerful option. There are decks such as Breya that just dominate this format, gaining control of a lot of cards from these decks, usually in the mirror matchup. Cards like Memnarch and Olivia Voldaren are super powerful, so you can only imagine when artifacts such as Soul Ring, Gilded Lotus are so powerful in the format, gaining control of them for your own uses is just insanely powerful. Now there's the obvious downside of just not having enough resources, enough mana to take advantage of it before your opponents get rid of it, but most of the time if you do have mana, you're just going to, one at a time, transform things into artifacts if they aren't already artifacts, and then gain control of them until your opponents don't really have much in the way of you in winning. But just a very powerful card, one of the best known sort of thief type cards in the format. Number 2 is Treachery. When it comes into play, you untap up to 5 lands and you control the enchanted creature, so it's your basic mind control type effect. Nothing really special beyond just, oh I don't know, getting a creature for free. Even if you are playing bounce lands, anything that can tap for more than 1 mana, you can potentially ramp up with this card. It's just ridiculous. It is so simple, but yet one of the most powerful cards that you can throw in any blue deck. You're gaining control of the best creature you can gain control of, and at the same time, you don't have to lose any mana for doing it. It's just super ridiculous. If you're talking about just throwing it into your basic control deck, it's good. If you throw it into your average blue deck, it's good. There's really no scenario where I would say this card is bad. The fact that you lose no mana for using it kind of takes away any downside there would be to its simplicity. It doesn't really do anything else, yeah I know, but it doesn't really cost you any mana, and also has the potential to ramp you up if you have lands that can tap for 2 mana. There's really nothing else I can say to you guys to convince you how powerful this card is other than play it for yourselves. See what it's like. Playing cards for free is all about advantage and efficiency, knowing what to spend your mana on, knowing exactly what you want to do with your mana. That's all about winning the game. It's going to help you do that. You're going to be saving up your mana for other spells that you play in the game. Super powerful, usually cards that save you up mana, such as Palinchron, Frantic Search, Time Spiral. I mean, these are all powerful cards that are well known for dominating games, and pretty much just the perfect steal type effect, really. But it is not number 1. Number 1 is Bribery. This card is flat out annoying to have to deal with. If you've ever run into this card, if you have something like an Eldrazi in your deck, if you have a Blightsteel Colossus in your deck, if you have any of the Praetors, just any powerful creature in your deck, your opponents can just look through your deck, find it, take it and likely dominate the game by having just an insane presence on the board for only just 5 mana in blue. The sorcery is just ridiculous. All it really takes is an understanding of what decks your opponents are playing, and you can pretty much take the best possible creature from among your opponent's decks. Obviously, if there's an Animar deck at the table, you want to probably look through their deck. If someone's playing white, you know they're playing something like Kalia the Vast, you could potentially take their Avacyn Angel of Hope, and all your permanents are indestructible. No matter what you take, you're likely going to take the best possible option for your side of the board, whatever situation you're facing, and it's going to help you win. Having that option to take whatever you want from your opponent's decks, whatever creature you want, just plain and simple, it's going to give you all that advantage. It's going to take away from your opponents at the same time their best possible creature, whatever they need for a combo. So very similar to Thada Adele, multi-purposed, going to help you win the game. So anyway guys, that was the top 10 Thief cards in the Commander format. Let me know what you thought about the list. What are your favorite Thief related cards, active treason cards, mind control cards, whatever you want to call it. I just named it Thief cards because I thought that's basically what it was. Leave all your questions, comments in the comment section below. Anyway, you guys have a wonderful day. Void here signing off.